lockdowns are meant to keep us safe. But what if the real danger is already inside? These are 3 true school lockdown stories that no one can explain. Real events, shared by those who lived through them. Turn off the lights and listen closely, because some doors should never be opened. It started as just another normal Tuesday. The sky outside was gray, heavy with clouds that threatened rain. I remember sitting in the back of my history class, doodling in my notebook, half listening to Mr. Caldwell drone on about ancient civilizations. That's when the intercom buzzed to life. At first, it was just static, but then a faint voice, almost like a whisper, crackled through. "Lockdown! This is not a drill! Repeat, lockdown!" The room went still. Mr. Caldwell froze mid-sentence, his face pale. "Everyone move to the corner! Now!" We scrambled, dragging ourselves away from the windows, crouching against the far wall. The lights were switched off, plunging us into a dim, eerie darkness. I could hear the shallow breaths of my classmates, the occasional muffled sob, but something felt off. The announcement hadn't sounded like our principal. The voice was distorted, hollow, and there was a strange background noise, almost like whispering. Minutes passed, maybe longer. It was hard to tell. My heart raced so loud it echoed in my ears. That's when I heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming down the hallway. But it wasn't normal walking. The steps were uneven, dragging like someone was limping. And then, the sound of something scraping along the lockers, metal against metal. I held my breath, straining to hear. Whoever or whatever it was, they were getting closer. Through the tiny window in the classroom door, I saw a shadow pass by. It stopped, right in front of our door. We all went silent, not even daring to breathe. Then came the knock. Knock, knock, knock. It was slow, methodical, each hit sending chills through my spine. Mr. Caldwell held a finger to his lips, signaling us to stay quiet. But then, the doorknob started to turn. We watched in horror as it twisted slowly, but thankfully, it was locked. The figure outside jiggled the handle a few times before stopping. And then, in that same distorted voice from the intercom, it spoke. "I know you're in there." A girl next to me started crying silently. I wanted to tell her to stop, but I couldn't even form words. The figure pressed its face against the small glass window. I could barely make out the features, a cracked, pale mask with hollow eyes. Then, it smiled. Or at least, the cracks in the mask shifted, creating a horrifying grin. Suddenly, the lights flickered back on. The intercom buzzed again. "All clear. Lockdown lifted." The figure outside? Gone. Mr. Caldwell hesitated, but eventually unlocked the door. We peeked out into the hallway. Empty. No signs of anyone. No footprints. Nothing. The principal came over the loudspeaker again, this time in his normal voice. "Apologies for the false alarm. A technical glitch triggered the lockdown." But that didn't explain the footsteps, the knocking, the voice. And here's the thing. When I checked my phone later, I found a message. No number, no sender. It simply read, "Next time, don't hide. I never found out who or what was behind that lockdown. But sometimes when I'm alone, I swear I hear that knock again. Knock, knock, knock. And I wonder, what would have happened if we had opened the door? It was supposed to be just another boring Friday at school. You know, counting down the hours until the weekend, zoning out during math class. But that day, something was off. I remember sitting in my last period English class when the intercom crackled to life. The usual static, followed by the principal's shaky voice. "This is a lockdown. This is not a drill. Teachers, initiate lockdown procedures immediately. At first, we all exchanged nervous glances, half expecting someone to laugh and admit it was a prank. But the look on Mr. Harris's face told us otherwise. He was pale, his hands trembling as he rushed to lock the door and turn off the lights. We all scrambled to the corner of the room, crouching low, trying not to make a sound. Minutes ticked by, but it felt like hours. The only sounds were our shallow breaths and the distant hum of the school's old ventilation system. That's when I noticed something strange. From my spot near the window, I could see down the empty hallway. The lockers lined up perfectly, the flickering fluorescent lights casting eerie shadows. And then I saw movement. A figure, but not a teacher, not a student. They moved strangely, jerky, like a puppet with its strings tangled. Their head tilted at an unnatural angle, face obscured by what looked like a cracked porcelain mask. I froze. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. The figure walked slowly, dragging what sounded like metal across the floor. It echoed down the hallway, a chilling screech that made my skin crawl. "Do you see that?" I whispered to Jenna next to me. But when I looked at her, she was staring straight ahead, eyes wide, tears streaming down her face. The figure stopped right in front of our classroom door. We held our breath. A faint knock, slow and deliberate. Knock, knock, knock. Mr. Harris held a finger to his lips, silently pleading for us to stay quiet. The figure pressed its face against the small glass window on the door. That cracked mask, now inches from us, made my stomach twist. Then, it spoke. In a distorted, almost metallic voice, it whispered, "I see you." I felt a wave of nausea. Jenna muffled a sob. Someone behind me whispered a prayer. And then, just as suddenly, the figure turned and walked away, its metal dragging sound fading into the distance. We sat there, paralyzed, until the all clear was finally given over the intercom. But here's the thing. When the police arrived, they found no signs of forced entry. No footprints, nothing on the security cameras. It was like it never happened. But we all saw it. And sometimes, late at night, I still hear that slow, deliberate knock echoing in my dreams. Knock, knock, knock. Was it a person? Something else? I don't know. But I do know one thing. Some doors should never be opened, even if they're only in your mind. It was one of those cold, gray mornings where everything just felt off. You know what I mean? The kind of morning where the air feels too still, too quiet. Even the usual chatter in the hallways seemed muted. I was in third period biology, sitting near the window, half listening as Mrs. Green talked about cell division. I remember staring out at the overcast sky when the intercom crackled on. But instead of the usual static and announcements, there was just silence. Then a voice. But it wasn't our principal. It was low, raspy, almost like someone was speaking through a broken speaker. "Lockdown. This is not a drill." The whole class froze. Mrs. Green's face went pale as she quickly locked the door and turned off the lights. "Everyone to the back. Now," she whispered. We huddled together in the corner, hearts racing. I could hear someone crying softly behind me. It was so quiet that I could hear my own breathing, shaky, uneven. That's when the whispers started. At first, I thought it was someone in the room, but no one was talking. The whispers were coming from the hallway. Low, incomprehensible murmurs, like a dozen voices all speaking at once but saying nothing clear. I strained to listen, trying to make out any words, but it was just noise. Then footsteps, slow, deliberate, getting closer. Through the crack between the blinds, I saw a figure. Tall, thin, wearing what looked like a tattered hoodie, head down, hands dragging something metallic along the lockers. The scraping sound echoed through the hall. Mrs. Green covered her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. She mouthed, "Stay quiet." The figure stopped right outside our door. Knock, knock, knock. 3 slow knocks that reverberated through the room. No one moved. No one even breathed. Then the doorknob began to turn, but it was locked. Thank God. The figure jiggled it a few times before stopping. And then it spoke. "I know you're in there." The voice was distorted, like it was layered over itself, echoing unnaturally. I felt my chest tighten, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. The figure leaned forward, pressing its face against the small glass window. Its face was wrong. Pale, almost gray, with hollow eyes that looked straight through us. Then, just as quickly as it had appeared, it moved on. The scraping sound faded down the hall, followed by more whispers. We sat there, paralyzed, until the intercom buzzed again. "All clear, lockdown over." But here's the thing. The voice was different this time. It was our actual principal, sounding confused and apologetic. "We're sorry for the false alarm. There was a malfunction in the system." But that didn't explain what we saw, or the whispers. After school, I asked Mrs. Green about it. She looked at me, her face pale and tired, and said, "I've worked here for 20 years. This isn't the first time something like this has happened." I didn't know what to say. But that night, as I was lying in bed, I got a text from an unknown number. It simply read, "You can't hide forever." I never figured out who or what was in that hallway, but sometimes, late at night, I still hear those whispers. And I wonder, what would have happened if the door hadn't been locked?